So, hi everyone. My name is Patrick. I'm the founder of NMKR, as you hopefully know, and I'm very happy to welcome you to another live stream. We've been streaming a lot in the last few days, but there's also a lot of exciting stuff to talk about. Today, I'm actually here with a lot of guests. We're 7 people in the call right now, and there's a lot of stuff to talk about, and I'm very excited to welcome all of these guests. So I'm gonna all bring them up to the screen right now. Hello, everyone. Hope you're all doing great. Nice. That was a very nice wave, synchronized wave. So before we dive deeper into the topic of the satellite oracles and what we are planning to do with all the catalyst proposals we've created together, let's do a quick round of introductions. So maybe Santiago, do you want to begin? Who are you?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Santiago Carmuega. I'm the CEO of TxPipe. At TxPipe, we develop open source software for blockchain, mainly in the Cardano ecosystem.
Nice, very sweet and short. Maybe Niels, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Patrick. I'm Nils, one of the co-founders and CEOs of DigiFarm. We're an ag tech startup based in Norway, and I'm also a farmer myself. And we work on a very core subject in agriculture, but it's the detection of field boundaries. And here we collaborate with Josef, which you'll meet shortly, with the satellite imagery data. So very familiar place to be, and thanks for having us here.
Thanks for joining us. And as you all realized already, I'm not going in order, so never know who's next. Maybe Ben.
Thank you very much. It's really nice to meet everybody. I'm Ben. I'm together here with Nils, as I'm mainly responsible for the commercial side of DigiFarm. I'm also coming from a farming background myself, I would say, with vast experience in digital agricultural solutions all around. Thank you.
Glad to have you. Shay, is that the correct way to pronounce your name?
Shai.
Shai, oh, sorry.
Hey Patrick, thank you for having us. So I'm a recently new addition to the Cardano ecosystem. I'm leading a couple of projects from Fund 11 in the Oracle domain. So I will be leading and coordinating the satellite oracles project that we're going to speak about soon.
Glad to have you. And then last but not least, Josef, how are you today?
Hi, Josef. Thank you, Patrick. Great to be here. I have a technical background in remote sensing. I'm a founder of Gamma Earth, and our focus is on democratizing access to high-quality, high-resolution satellite imagery. Thank you.
Wonderful. So now that we have the introductions out of the way, let's dive a little bit into the topic. We have 3 catalyst proposals that we want to talk about today. They all have to do with satellite oracles, so that's the overall theme. But maybe let's just begin with the first proposal that we have. It's just a joint satellite oracles proposal that we all have together. And I think Josef maybe or Shai actually, maybe it's a good idea for you to just give us like an overview over the whole proposal, and then we can all dive a little bit deeper.
Right, a real exciting one. So first, a great opportunity to collaborate. First, we have a very strong technical expert from outside of the ecosystem, bringing the expertise in satellite imagery and data processing, and then putting it together with key contributors to the Cardano ecosystem like TxPipe and Maker. So really excited. This project, I would say it's an overarching project about how do we get satellite source information and data and represent it on the blockchain in the most robust way to enhance trust in the data. Right now, we're all doing separate projects, and other projects are going to talk about use cases for this data. But this project is kind of independent, but yet central to how we are going to consume this data in the future. We're already talking to multiple potential consumers of this data down the line, and I think that the excitement is there. The goal of the project essentially is to be the first step towards what will become later a decentralized oracle and a decentralized ecosystem for satellite-based data.
So to summarize, essentially, it's taking satellite data and it's putting it on the blockchain, right? Which is
Exactly.
very exciting if you phrase it like that. But I think it's also very exciting because of all the use cases it can provide. So maybe Joseph, do you want to follow up? What's your role in this project?
Sure. So to explain what we are trying to do today, the situation in the satellite imagery industry is there are kind of two camps. There's low quality data that is generally available for relatively low cost, but it's not good enough for the vast majority of practical commercial applications. And then there is the other extreme where you have very high quality commercial data that is extremely expensive. And so any commercial activity is basically is prohibitive. Again, in the vast majority of commercial use case, the cost of this imagery is just way too high. So what I'm trying to do and what we are trying to do in this project is to create a bridge kind of between these two extremes and create a source of satellite imagery data that would be of high quality and yet systematically available and inexpensive. That's the idea. And this, our hope is that this will kind of open the floodgate for many extremely useful and economically viable use cases for satellite imagery. Thank you.
Great. So essentially, what you're saying is you're taking satellite imagery and you're essentially providing high quality data for a reasonable cost. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty much. So we are taking low resolution data that is available for very low cost, and then through the use of very advanced AI, we kind of reconstruct and turn it into a type of satellite imagery data that is typically available at very high cost, like at a cost that is 100 times higher. So there's a kind of two orders of magnitude of economic gap that we are closing with this AI. And if we can make this data broadly available and people kind of building trust in this type of data, because there's obviously, as in many applications of AI, there is some skepticism and the trust issue to overcome. But if we over time create this trust building mechanisms and people start using it and validating it for various use cases, this can be definitely a game changer for the entire industry. There's no doubt about this.
Okay. So low quality imagery and using AI to make it high quality, and because of that, it's low cost, which enables a lot more use cases than previously possible, because in the past it was only available for a high price. Very
precisely. Yeah.
Cool. Then I think let's go over to you, Niels, because you have been using this data, of course, and you are probably the perfect person to talk about what kind of use cases there can be with such a new system. So yeah, maybe do you want to tell us more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great point, and yeah, we have this use case for the wonderful technology that Joseph has been developing, and for us, it's field boundaries. And you think field boundaries, why is it important? But it's the key fundamental data layer to any digitization of agriculture, analytics, and creating precision ag services. And typically, what we've had before is farmers and growers going out and drawing these boundaries on a map, which is an outdated map, which becomes inaccurate, and the further you go down the value chain of agriculture, the less reliable this data gets and more messy. So it's interesting to think about the 83% of the world's agricultural fields is smaller than 2 hectares, which is quite small. And exactly as Joseph mentioned, that when you use this, the low resolution data that is available publicly and freely available, it's just not sufficient for being able to detect those boundaries well. And you can go the other route, exactly as Joseph said too, to buy this data, but it's just no price point or budget in the industry to be able to justify the cost of acquiring that data. So the ability to have this 1 meter super resolution of Sentinel-2 data, which Joseph does, is like an ideal input data for us to be able to detect field boundaries. So we really want to be able to capture the seeded acres or planted area for a particular boundary in the season, and then power and deliver this through the agri value chain through APIs and different systems to create this ecosystem of different use cases on top. So we're very excited about this, and I think the combination makes for a great partnership. Yeah.
I completely agree, and I think it's very interesting because we are essentially going this path right now, also in form of the interview. Like, we start with this low quality data, then we make high quality data out of it, then we bring it to you. You basically use it to create these like field boundaries and offer them as like an infrastructure layer to farmers and whoever wants to use it, right? And then the next step is, of course, where TxPipe and Santiago come in, and that's really the interesting part, and why we're doing here that's the really interesting part. Everything is interesting, but that's the Cardano part, I guess. So for me as the blockchain enthusiast, that's the interesting part. So over to you, Santiago. What else are we doing with this data now?
Yeah, so first of all, why is it interesting to put stuff on the blockchain besides just the term blockchain? So the idea is, once we have this data or a shape of this data on the blockchain, we can connect that to smart contracts. That means that financial applications can make use of that. That means that real-world asset tokenization can happen with a more rich data that it's already in the blockchain. And we need to put it on the blockchain for this to work, because smart contracts can only see data that it's already in the blockchain. They can't go outside and, for example, fetch from an API. That doesn't happen in smart contracts. Everything that happens needs to already be as data on the blockchain. And that's where oracles come in. An oracle is a component that fetches the data from whatever source, and then it puts it on the chain so that smart contracts can use it. Now, imagery and satellite data, it's a real challenge because blockchains are very constrained. There is only a certain amount of data that you can put, and only a certain amount of computation that it can happen inside the blockchain. So here, our role in the project, which is how we bring this data onto the blockchain, has this challenge of how we compress it and how we turn it into something that makes sense further down the line. And the idea here is that from all of this imagery and satellite data, that it's gigabytes of data, and after it is enriched through AI, and once we have the field boundaries around it, so we can crop it and extract some of that data for a specific geographic location. From there, we need to extract insights, qualitative insights that can be turned into numbers, and that is where compression happens. We are turning raw information, raw pixels, into a specific insight that can talk, for example, about yield estimation, or maybe the health of the crop that is within that field boundary. Once we have that as a quantitative number, we can put it on chain, and then a financial application through a smart contract can make use of that value. And that opens up the possibilities to a lot of things. And just one final comment, there is a lot of types of oracles, and it's a broad category. And we were mentioning before that this is the first step into a decentralized oracle, because to make it really robust and resilient, the data that we put in blockchain doesn't have to go through a single entity, because that would be a single point of failure, a problem with smart contracts that just trust whatever is coming through the blockchain. So in this first stage, we're just focusing on how we compress this data and extract quantitative insights to put in the blockchain. And at a future point in time, we will see how we can turn this into a truly decentralized oracle that doesn't have a single point of failure.
Wonderfully put. So extremely exciting. So just to recap, essentially, we're taking this Oracle data, low quality Oracle data, we're making it better through the use of AI. We're then turning it into very specific farming data, and then essentially saying, okay, now we're using, or we're building an Oracle to put it on the blockchain, right? And then the interesting part begins, because then it's really cool or easy for applications to use this data in form of either just directly through the Oracle, or also potentially just combining it with this ownership concept. So, I'm from NMKR, of course, we do NFTs and tokenization and real world assets and stuff like that. But imagine you have ownership over a property in form of an NFT, and you know exactly, okay, this sort of land piece belongs to me, and you have Oracle data on chain which says, for example, okay, the crops are gonna grow and the weather is good and stuff like that. You could use this to potentially just put it into a DeFi protocol, and the DeFi protocol could say, okay, this all looks good, so let's give him a higher credit score, and we give him a good lending score, and he can get a lot of money to invest into future projects and make more money. So it really is about enabling these kinds of use cases for regular people that just want to benefit. They don't even have to care about the blockchain. They just want to have the benefit of the blockchain, of course. But by building these decentralized applications, it's a really powerful tool, because we can just use this data, which was previously so inaccessible, and make it extremely accessible, not only for the person whose data we're basically talking about, or who's a land plot, but also for all the DeFi protocols and all the people that want to maybe give out a loan or do whatever they want to do, insurance, whatever. So I'm very excited about that, and I think it's going to enable a lot of really cool use cases. And of course, Cardano has always been the blockchain that is here for these real world solutions. So I think this is actually the perfect use case, and especially us for companies coming together and saying, okay, let's not build this on our own, but we all have this very specific expertise in one area, and we're all bringing it together to combine it essentially and build this really cool solution, is extremely powerful. So I'm very proud of this proposal. But of course, this is not our only proposal. We have 3 proposals to talk about today. And by the way, I'm managing all the layouts here as well, so bear with me if it's not perfect. But I want to go over and maybe go to the second proposal very quickly, and then do the third one, and then afterwards we're gonna go into questions. So the second proposal is very specifically from Niels. So Niels, maybe it's a good idea if you just give us a rough overview. Let me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks for that, Patrick. Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, exactly. So the second proposal, R1 here, is again about this boundary component, but it's called Satellite Agriculture DApps, and it helps the smallholder farmers in Kenya and Tanzania, which was the 2 first kind of areas that we looked at. And again, it uses this wonderful satellite data to be able to delineate the field boundaries, tell you a little bit about the productivity and vegetation. And then, of course, put this on the blockchain, which is what we certainly need a lot of help with to improve the crop yields and optimize the operations for the farmers. And I think the first thing is just this part of digitizing their land. There's some statistics out there about 30% of agricultural land is just not digitized or publicly available. This is certainly a bigger problem in smallholder markets than it is in countries or in regions like US and Europe, where you have kind of cadastral data, or at least ownership data, although it doesn't tell you much about the actual in-season crop data. But certainly in smallholder farmers, it's a much bigger challenge, and we want to see what we can do to help that part. And the first is just getting a digital footprint for the farmers, for their crop fields, a unique field ID, of course, and the ability to give a little bit of historical productivity on that field. And the idea is, of course, that this is going to help, lower insurance premiums, get better lending conditions, better terms on seed and crop protection and fertilizer, through creating this kind of historical footprint for the boundary and the farmer. And we're really hopeful about this. I think, when we look at this market or these regions in Africa, especially also India and parts of APAC, there's a lot of missing publicly available data. The farmers do struggle with digitization. And I think the last component, which is also quite interesting, is that when you are digitizing these field boundaries, most of the time people are going to the field and walking the actual corners of the field. And sometimes this is done in really small fields, with smartphones which have like low GPS accuracy or geofence accuracy, it becomes a little bit of a mess. So I think this ability to create this tidy, clean, nice, useful data set will make a difference in that region. So we're very excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds very exciting, and the thing for me as like the interviewer here is, of course, I'm from a very first world country. I live in Zurich. I live in Switzerland. I've never had a farm. I know nothing, even though I'm in India right now. So can you tell me a little bit about like the typical issues or challenges that such a farmer might face in one of the like target countries essentially, and how exactly you're trying to solve this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can even take it from my perspective. So I took over my family farm in Norway 10 years ago, and I didn't have much of an agronomy experience. So for me, it was also a learning curve. But it's much the same, just less technologically mature in developed countries. But for me, boundaries is the key fundamental data layer. If I want to do any planning on my fields, or if I want to buy seeds, or do variable rate map for crop protection or fertilizer, I need these boundaries. I also need it for my subsidy declaration, insurance stuff, finance. And most of the time, the farmer themselves are responsible for having to draw these on a map. Most of the time when we draw these boundaries on a map manually, we don't do it that well because, it's kind of boring, or also very difficult to do on a mobile phone, for example. But most of the time you're doing on outdated imagery data. So most of the time we have orthophoto, aerial imagery, a plane that flies over the country and takes an image every 2 to 3 years. But the problem is you have outdated data that you're drawing these boundaries on. So that's the first problem. And the second problem is that you do this in many different systems. Like I do it now in 3 or 4 completely different systems, and they don't talk to each other. They live in data silos, and there's very little exchange. So there's a problem with fragmentation and automation. And you can imagine this is even more so magnified in developed countries. So, the ability to have one unique data set or one field boundary, for example, with seeded acres from the season, and have that go across an entire ecosystem that builds services and data analytics on top is a massive value. It removes this friction point for farmers to get adoption or get digitized and have access to precision ag services and analytics they need to optimize their farming. And it starts there. It starts with the boundaries. So, that's how I see it from my side, and I think we have a unique opportunity here. Also from a price point, like Josef was mentioning, it wouldn't be possible for us to buy this high resolution commercial grade satellite data and do this in Kenya and Tanzania, for example. The price point's different. So the ability to have this, coupled with this low cost and high resolution imagery plus boundaries and ecosystem, I think is a really good starting point.
So how precise is the data? Like how small can we go?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, there's certain things you can't see in the picture, right? And I think for us, we have a threshold of a certain boundary that we can't delineate below, but that's somewhere around 0.01 hectares. So, even in these regions, we're capturing the majority of the boundaries. So of course it's edge cases, but that's where it goes. So, and it's all, we're bound, of course, by the resolution, but certainly I think this 1 meter is a perfect source of data for the region. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So essentially, maybe just to summarize, and correct me if I'm wrong in any points here, what you're saying is there's all these farmers in the world, be it small or big, that essentially have to know exactly, okay, what are the boundaries of my field? How can I use this to calculate how much, whatever they need? And essentially, there are many different ways to do that. And one of them that you mentioned was just taking pictures and essentially drawing on them, right? That's a very like basic one. But then also I assume there's like smaller farmers that just don't have any sort of planning like that at all, right? And what you're doing is you're essentially creating a layer that works for everyone around the world, in the same sort of manner. So you're really leveling the playing field, and you're really like making it accessible, which is, you know, exactly what blockchain is about, and exactly what we need, right? Did I capture it?
You explained it perfectly. I couldn't have done it better myself. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think it's an enabler, right? We look at boundaries like an enabler, which is why we're excited about this ecosystem, is that if we can, you know, with Joseph, the imagery and the boundaries, and then with the help of you guys, that when you actually build like an actual ecosystem, that you can build different services on top. And I think that's very exciting for us. Yeah, so it's very exciting. Yeah.
Wonderful. Great. Then let's go over to the third proposal and the last one, and then afterwards we're going to answer some more questions. So Joseph, I'm going to pull you up on screen. Please tell us about the third proposal, the Ekomandala NFT proposal.
Sure. So the idea there is to take it basically one step further. So satellite imagery is one component. It's extremely important data layer. Field boundaries is definitely absolutely key kind of part of the foundational stack on which you can build different applications. But then you need additional layers of information, such as climate information, historical usage, like land use record, and a variety of other modalities of information that you need access to in order to really create useful and economically interesting applications. And so getting access to each of these layers is a huge hassle right now. You need to go to a variety of different services. For example, weather information, you have a choice of multiple sources. They're generally quite difficult to access, and you need to build your entire technological stack of data management to bring these data layers together. So instead of all that, what we kind of envision is that you preemptively collect all the, and then not these basic data layers, there are not that many of them. There's, I don't know, half a dozen of key sources of information that you need to bring together to start creating useful applications. And so we want to actually bring them together and create a consolidated source of data that will tie all of these different, very different like modalities of information into one standard format that is accessible at very low cost and very low overhead, right? So, and then on top of all this, based on some of the research and the development that we've done, you can actually do it in an extremely beautiful, like aesthetically pleasing way. So you kind of build all of these data layers, you compile them into what we call Ekomandala, which is kind of graphical representation of all of these data layers. And we generate them for any desired piece of land. We kind of break the entire surface of the Earth into these beautiful hexagons. And for each hexagon, we generate this, we collect all of these data layers, and we do it dynamically. So you can kind of have a graphical, beautiful graphical representation of all of this data that evolves over time. And this kind of just creates a very beautiful NFT that people can own for their farm or for their field or for their estate or anywhere they want. And kind of even when you spend some time looking at these graphical representations, you kind of build intuition around it, and you can say exactly what was the history of this plot of land, what is its value, what has been happening there over the last 2 decades. And we believe this is a very interesting, exciting and valuable thing that can happen.
Okay, so essentially what you're saying is there are many different layers of geodata, right? One of them being imagery, what you have been doing in the past or are doing right now with the satellites, and there you are basically taking low quality data and enhancing it and making it better and more accessible. And now what you're planning to do is you're basically saying, okay, you want to do that for all the different layers. And you mentioned there's only like half a dozen or something of them. So can you like give me a few examples of like what kind of a data layer you're looking at?
Yeah. We started discussing satellite imagery, but satellite imagery is a snapshot in time, right? So when you look at the satellite imagery, you look at a beautiful picture, but that's it. You see just one single snapshot in time. You have no idea what happened to this particular field over time. And what you can do is you can collect satellite imagery over a course of last 3 years, and then on top of this over the course of the last 12 years, right? And represent it graphically, extract certain amount of information from this time series of imagery in such a way that you see the image that it's a very visual, very intentionally, deliberately, it's a very visual thing. So if somebody's seen some of the presentations that we have, so you see at the same graphical representation, you see both the instantaneous image of how this field looks today, but also historical record of how this field obviously compressed, right? You don't see all of the images, but you kind of compile some averages of certain aspects of historical data such that you can immediately see the historical record of this particular plot of land. But also in addition to this, you also see the weather historical record for this place. So you see when it was raining there and when it was dry and what were the temperatures. And then also on top of this, you have a long-term trend, sustainability trend. So for over the past of 12 years, what is called primary production. So how productive this plot of land has been over the course of 12 years. So the main data layers is satellite imagery, then compressed historical record of satellite imagery, plus multiple layers of weather and climate data. So this is kind of, in a nutshell, what's included in this echo mandala. But all together, taking all of this data together, it allows you to very accurately understand not just what is happening with this plot of land right now, but what has been happening to it over the course of over a decade, and also what its value in terms of agricultural potential and biodiversity, etc.
Okay, so it's not so much about taking different sources and aggregating them. It's more about taking the time series of the satellite imagery and compressing it, and based off of that, having a visual representation of what has been happening with this land. Is that correct?
It's actually both. So it's a historical record of the satellite imagery, but also additional data layers such as climate and weather information and soil quality information, for example, that are kind of compiled in one integrated data set. And again, I would very much recommend for anybody that may be curious about this is to see like the visual representation of this, because it's kind of self-explanatory and just visually compelling.
Great. Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense. Unfortunately, I don't have any images of it right now. So otherwise, I would put them up on the stream, but maybe we can put them in the description or in the comments later. And maybe, one thing that is, of course, very interesting is what is the actual like advantage of representing it like that? I can imagine there's a lot of like environmental possibilities there, like conservation stuff that you can do with it. But what do you see as like the main advantage of basically representing the data in such a form?
So it's basically streamlining access to this data and removing the overhead. It's a little bit similar to the situation with the satellite imagery. is that, let's say that you have certain wonderful, exciting application and you want to do some environmental research or what have you, right? So you first, before you do anything, you spend like 6 months building APIs to these different weather, climate services, satellite imagery services. You pre-compile historical record of satellite imagery. It's just it's enormous amount of work before you do any work that you actually are interested in, right? And so we just want to, as you do in any other domains, you just want to streamline this process. And it's also extremely challenging because this data comes in different cadence, it's different formats. It's very difficult to consolidate because it's multimodal. So if you want to build some kind of train some AI models on top of it, it's extremely difficult to actually format in such a way that the model in a balanced way will understand both the satellite imagery, which is the spatial information, and the temporal, historical record, and the weather information, squeezing it all into some kind of format that would be suitable for AI training, for example, is extremely difficult task. So we want to remove all of this complexity and give the users, right, access to standardized metrics of data where all of this information is pre-compiled and ready to be used for whatever exciting application they have in mind.
That is very exciting. And I think the common theme behind all three proposals that we're talking about is this accessibility part of it, right? Because essentially it's always about just taking something that exists but is super inaccessible and making it accessible to everyone so that people can use it to build on top of it, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
And then maybe I'll just add that I've been involved in quite a few startups that are doing environmental research or sustainability research. And the task of engineers is the first several months is just figuring out how to get access to this data. And if they are successful, and in the process, like 3 million in the precious funding is already spent, if they are successful, then they get to actually do any real analysis. So we want to remove all of this overhead.
That's crazy. I mean, there's a lot of money involved in this and a lot of engineering power that could be used better. So I'm fully with you. I think this is an amazing use case. And just to maybe go the last mile, how does the Cardano blockchain now come into play? Like, what is the advantage of the NFTs in this case?
So if you want me to answer this, I mean, I'm not the best expert.
You can also go, or yeah.
But I'll just give my perspective, is that this whole thing is about traceability, transparency, and trustfulness. So when you get this data that is pre-compiled, that came from various sources, unless people trust it and unless everybody can verify that the data has not been tampered with, and the whole process, pre-processing, is fully transparent, open source and clear, people will not use it because it's very difficult to the entire industry of sustainability is about trust, right? And so if we can put it on blockchain in such a way that we can guarantee that data is transparently sourced, all the processing steps are clearly described, and everybody can go step by step and understand exactly what has been done and where the data came from, step after step. This is absolutely essential for this to really take flight. Yeah.
Wonderful. Great. Then let me move you and replace you with Santiago for a few minutes. So Santiago, welcome back. I'm just cycling through everyone here on the panel. I never did an interview with that many people, but I really want to hear from you now, because I think, of course, you're the Cardano expert here. So I really want to just hear your opinion about all three proposals. how do you think the Cardano community and the ecosystem will benefit from them, and how does it like fit into the ethos of Cardano?
Well, I think that a lot of what has been said applies to blockchain in general. But Cardano has a thriving DeFi ecosystem. Cardano has great, brilliant developers working on new ways of approaching these protocols, mainly because Cardano, since it uses the UTXO model, as opposed to many other blockchains that use the account model, requires thinking of these protocols in a different way. It has a lot of benefits, for sure. Determinism, it's the main one, in my opinion, and allows us for having a very secure and robust chain, which Cardano is, to my knowledge, the best example of one. So I think Cardano is for sure a place where if you need to have trusted information to use as part of financial or real world asset organization, Cardano is the place to be. Regarding the use cases, when we were talking about this NFTs describing each of the fields, it reminds me a lot of decentralized identities, and I think there is a mapping that can happen, an analogy that can be traced between identifying a person and maybe identifying a piece of land. There is a lot that can be done once you have that identity, which in this case is the field boundary that Nils was describing. Once you have that, then you can start asking questions about what that field provides, what's the history, and everything that we discussed so far. So from Cardano perspective, which has always focused not only on being a place for crypto speculation, but rather trying to become the financial operating system of the world, having these real world use cases and flows and protocols that are focused not only on DeFi, but also in all of this other types of data and interactions in the real world. For me, it sounds really exciting and something that for sure I want to be working on for many years to come.
I completely agree with you. Of course, this is partially the reason why I and hopefully many others joined Cardano, because we see these like real world applications and these things that actually it makes sense to couple them with the blockchain, right? All of these projects are amazing in their own regard, but just taking it, putting it on the blockchain, making it more accessible, and basically combining it with financial instruments as well, is a game changer in my perspective. So I think it's super exciting that we all came together here, and it's amazing that we have four brilliant companies working on all of these proposals. And the one, of course, that we are all working on together is the Satellite Oracles proposal, but all the other ones, we're all involved in some sort of way. So super exciting. Maybe, we've been streaming for 45 minutes already. Maybe let's just go through one more round. And I just want to hear from everyone, like, what makes you excited about, this, like your work and these kind of solutions that you're essentially trying to build and create? What is it that initially brought you into this? I think it's always interesting to hear like the maybe personal story or something in that area. So Niels, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, for me, I think it was just driven personally. I kept doing these drawing of the boundaries on my farm, and it's a headache. I remember having to draw them and then send them to my agronomist, and he would sit there and like update them, and then have to like manually pick like images to select for like this zoning stuff or variable rate. Anyways, it's I just realized it's a very data siloed, very fragmented, lacks a lot of animation. So I think, and we knew when we started this too that we couldn't solve everything. So we just wanted to focus on a very core area, and I think that's worked to our advantage. But it's that was my personal story, just going through that kind of pain points myself, and trying to find a simpler solution for it. But yeah.
Wonderful.
And I imagine there's other farmers like me out there. So yeah.
It's always best to build projects and products for yourself. That always works the best. So Shai, I think we heard the least from you. So feel free to give us some more.
Try to keep it long. Yeah, so listen, I have a financial background and a computer science background. So for me, it's very obvious how DLT and blockchain technology is going to shape the future of humanity and open up new ways for us to interact with each other on a financial level, but on other levels as well. And Security Oracle's project, I think, is a foundational layer for many such applications. Obviously, it's going to take time before we get there, but we have to go one step at a time, and I'm super excited to get started with this.
Wonderful. Anything else you want to add, or are these your final words? Anything I missed? Anything I need to highlight?
So listen, I mean, in terms of the applications that we think is lined up, I think we can mention many, but we'll touch agricultural supply chain and microfinance application. Once we enable this layer, I think there's going to be a floodgates of applications that are going to use satellite imagery. And I think this is what we're all excited about here, right? I think we all have this intuition, and we want to prove it. We want to show that that's the case. Blockchain. This is a case where blockchain technology, and I think particularly the Cardano ecosystem, which is so aligned with the open source movement of blockchain in general, and the decentralized governance. I think that's the best place for this kind of projects to shine.
Wonderful, perfect finishing words. Then I'm gonna give it to Joseph once more. Thank you, Shai. Joseph, what are your thoughts? What excites you about this whole project?
I mean, pretty much everything. Remote sensing has been a passion of mine for many years, but also I'm has been acutely aware of satellite imagery industry in general is a very frustrating one, because there's the amount of money that is invested in launching satellites. It's billions, but the reality is it's kind of secret reality that none of these companies make any money because of fundamentally broken business model. It's the data that they are selling is way too expensive, and nobody is using it. And so this is reflected by, if you look at the share price of any of the satellite imagery company, you will very quickly see this reflected there. And so finding a way to solve this business model, or be involved or contributing to a solution, to finding kind of a path towards a successful business model in satellite imagery is a absolutely exciting proposition, and I've been trying to do this and DigiFarm. I mean, DigiFarm is an example of one of the very few truly successful, profitable business models using satellite imagery. And together we process like 150 million square kilometers of high resolution data. This is numbers that I don't know whether any company in the world has done something similar. And so this is definitely very exciting, and it has, in my view, unlimited potential if we get this right. Thank you.
Thank you. That's extremely inspiring, and I completely agree with you. And I think DigiFarm is unbelievable, and I hope it's only the beginning. I think there's many opportunities out there. So last words. I'm gonna give it back to Santiago. You have the stage, and after that, we're gonna end the stream.
Okay, so fun story. Before blockchain and software development, I used to build drones a long time ago when drones were starting to appear, and building a drone was really hard and very costly. And I live in Argentina. There's a lot of farms here. And the idea was to build these drones and do remote sensing throughout the country. It didn't work because drones were just starting, but it's really close to my heart, this idea of turning imagery into insights that can be used from the data and improve farming throughout that process. So that's the first thing. But then from the blockchain perspective, it's hard because in blockchain, the value proposition is decentralization. It's being censorship resistant, fairness, equal opportunities for everybody. And those are very abstract concepts that sometimes are hard to sell in the real world, because you don't think you need them until something bad happens to you. So making sure that we can somehow show the benefits of having a fair and decentralized mechanism to transmit information, value, identity. It's something that has become my focus and will probably be for most of my life moving forward. So this project aligns with everything that I want to work with for the future.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for these inspiring words as well. We're going to end the stream now. I think we spoke long enough. Obviously, all three proposals are pretty amazing, and I'm not only saying that because I'm part of them, but because I genuinely believe that. You can find them all in the description and on Twitter, everywhere. So I hope you vote for us tomorrow when Catalyst voting begins. And yeah, thank you so much to all the guests and to everyone who was watching. We have almost 500 concurrent viewers, which is amazing. So thank you so much, and see you next time.